Hey, it's Lisa, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about what it's like to be the official agent for a Canadian election campaign. So I'll just go into my slideshow here. All right, so official agent is one of the most important positions on the campaign. It's interesting because you're kind of working for the candidate and the campaign, but you're also kind of working for Elections Canada because it's your job to get all of the financial records in order so that they can do an audit and make sure that you're doing what you say you're doing. So it's kind of like this regulation and enforcement kind of side to the job as well. Now, you don't have to be a lawyer or an accountant to do this kind of work, but it does help if you like to organize stuff because Elections Canada has these dozens of categories for campaign expenses. And here's a copy of their sheet on that. This is all in their software, by the way, and you've got multiple pages, dozens and dozens of headers as to how to classify just virtually any possible election expense. Office rent before the election, during the election, after the election, advertising for signs, advertising on the internet, vehicle mileage for transportation, ferry and air tickets, all kinds of stuff is covered. And to be an official agent, you have to be a Canadian citizen and you need to be at least 18 years old. And other things to think about there are whether or not you're going to be available before, during, and after the election. And the job could go on for more than a year. You're going to have to file stuff on deadline. You're going to have to be able to shuffle around a lot of paper or at least virtual records and account for all of them. And it can be a lot of work as well. I mean, it can help if you have somebody helping you to keep track of email and correspondence and maybe help you put up and identify different kinds of expenses and run around tracking down receipts. You can have people, if you've got volunteers who are able to do this, you can actually delegate some of these jobs to other people. That can make it a lot easier. I kind of wish I'd been able to do that myself. But again, it's going to be your name on the return. So you have to be able to be available to deal with all this stuff. If you've got family stuff going on, if you have to travel, or you've got school or work stuff that becomes really pressing at certain times of the year, like exams and that kind of stuff, you may want to be really cautious about saying yes to this kind of a position. Anyway, that said, it's a really essential job because a candidate needs somebody to be official agent to accept contributions and loans and transfers from their own party, in fact, to pay creditors, to do all kinds of stuff like that. And they can't do it without this official agent. The candidate cannot be their own agent. That's one of the rules. And if you're thinking about being an official agent, get the manual. It's for free at Elections Canada. Um, and you can actually get to their website and download it for free, or you can go to one of their seminars and get a paper copy like that. It looks like this. And this is actually the new version they've got here. And I'm showing you the cover July for 2021. So just last month, they finished editing and changing some of the bits in it. And the other thing you'll need if you're going to try to do this sort of work is it really helps. I urge people to make sure you got access to a PC computer to run the EFR software. EFR is Electronic Financial Return. That's the official accounting program for Elections Canada that the campaigns are using, and you have to submit all your reports and stuff in that. And so you're going to need to be able to run it. It won't run on a Mac. I asked back in 2008. They said, maybe. And 2019, no change. So there we go. You're going to need as well, internet access is really good to have because you're going to need to download forms and things. Also a scanner because you're going to get receipts and things that are in paper format. And they're moving now to electronic submissions for these sorts of things. And it's actually a good idea because trying to courier around bundles of documents is really expensive and you worry about losing stuff. And anyway, when COVID hit, I was kind of halfway in and halfway out of the electronic format. And so I was trying to scan stuff and take pictures with a phone, and it was crazy. So having access to a scanner is really good because it can help you convert all those paper things, paper records that they'll need to see for the audit into electronic format. A printer is also really good for printing off tax receipts. You're going to need that sooner or later. And you may find it useful to get a commercial type receipt book for writing preliminary receipts. When somebody brings you a donation, to be able to write there, log it, and then hand them proof that you actually got the donation is kind of nice. And you can print off the official ones when you get back and enter it into your laptop later on. Let's see, file folders, also very handy to have so you can organize all this stuff. Anyway, so assume that you're now the official agent because everybody else ran out of the room when they asked who was interested. And you were a bit slow maybe, and you were off on a bathroom break and you come in and now that you're official agent. Well, congratulations. So you got to ask, first of all, about whether it's possible to get a check or a transfer from the party's riding or district association. They should be the people who are fielding the elections committee, so they should be able to get you that money. So you want to know that you've got some money to start off with. Ask about e-banking options as well, because if you're going to try to get a campaign account, um, and it has to happen pretty soon. It's good to have one that has that e-banking because I didn't, and I got caught with the COVID stuff. I'm trying to call them and find out what's going on, and well, I can't come in and see you guys because the branch is closed due to COVID, and it caused a lot of problems. So it's good to see if you can actually get that from day one. Open the campaign account and ask about options for nonprofits because if they can cut you a deal on that, decrease surface charges, that's a really big thing. Um, Checking account is good because for now anyway, being able to write checks is still really important to pay creditors. You'll be asked to give the account a name, so you should have the candidate's name and the writing district if possible, and also the party name if you can get it in there, but it may be too long. So the main thing is the name of the candidate and the writing. Explain to the bank that people will probably get the candidate's name wrong when they're writing donation checks. And they'll be cool with that because they'll know that people are trying and they often just miss the candidate's name. Suggested format for the name of the account would be the name of the candidate and their campaign. So, and then if you've got room, the writing name. So Sandwich Gulf Islands is kind of long. Other places a little bit easier, like Halifax. Okay, we can live with that. But a lot of places you're going to have to abbreviate the actual writing name because it's just too much. Okay, so the other thing you have to do as an official agent near the start of the campaign is to figure out who's going to be your auditor because you're the agent, you're going to have to pick somebody to do that. And the manual says after you receive 10,000 bucks in contributions or spend that much on the campaign, you're going to have to find someone to do that. But the auditor is going to take a while to track down sometimes because it can't be anybody off the street. Not like me being an agent. It has to be someone who's got a CPA accreditation and is recognized as being able to do that kind of thing. And so it's not everyone who can do that. And also your party might have an idea if they're having the same firm do all of the accounts in that one area, then they may have somebody they want you to pick already. So be sure to check around about that. So that's important to find the auditor. Now some magic numbers. Donations that are over $20. Uh, you have to give them a receipt. You can't have anonymous money coming in big wads. So $20, anything more than 20 bucks, that's something that you have to actually think about giving a receipt for. Bills, if your bill is under $50, they aren't quite as picky about that with Elections Canada. If you've lost a receipt or something, then it's not such a big deal. But if you have something that's over 50 bucks, like $500, and you lose the receipt, that could be an issue, especially. Anyway, but if you got less than $50, if you kind of have the payment recorded and some kind of idea about what you spent it on, that's a big help, even if you can't find a receipt. So anyway, that's a bit of a tip there. The other thing is $200. That's another magic number to keep in mind. If your donation that you're receiving is more than $200, you're going to need to get the person's address because they're going to have to compile that for Elections Canada. They're going to need that information and they want to see that when they're doing the audit. So if you're getting all these checks coming in that are bigger than that, you're going to need to make sure people have some information on that, where they live. Also, $200 is another important number here for uh, in-kind donations. These are things like goods and services. They call it in-kind because it's not the money, but it's worth something still. And usually if it's under $200, they call it deemed nil. They say it doesn't really count, but I would still make a note of it just in case there's an audit. So you can explain who actually gave that stuff and what for. And the thing is that they also want to make sure that the person who's donating the stuff, it's not their line of work. So if a taxi driver is offering your candidate a ride in their taxi, because that's their job, that's still something that you have to record, even if it's under $200, for example. Or if somebody's a web designer, that's their job and offers to work on your website for your campaign, well, because that's their profession and how they make a living, that's still something that you have to take into account as far as the actual charge. Even if it's maybe under $200, you still have to log that. Anyway, So check how much you're allowed to spend for your area. They're going to offer you a new list for every election, but for the old election, for example, this is the expenses list for 2019. That election, and our riding, Saanich Gulf Islands, is down here as $127,000, $530.27. So anyways, you can see here that they've got all these different numbers listed for each of these campaigns and how much we're allowed to spend. We didn't actually have that much in terms of our final donation amount, so that was okay, but something to keep in mind there. Oh yeah, non-monetary contribution. Speaking of that sort of thing, if you're reusing signs from an earlier election, that still counts as a contribution, basically, or something that your party gave you. So you have to estimate the current commercial value. So the old signs and the new signs, you're still talking money in value. And so you usually will end up using the current commercial value for new signs, for the old signs as well. You'll need to put together a list probably of estimated rental and purchase prices for different stuff like office furniture or laptops or whatever. You may need to figure out, okay, what's the approximate, the fair market price of these kinds of things, whether it's a actual purchase or a rental. Also volunteers, figure out what's going on with the volunteers with your campaign. Volunteer labor does not count as a contribution. That's the general rule, but there are exceptions if the person is self-employed in that area. We talked about a web designer, if you're a photographer as well, who's offering to work for the campaign for free. Again, if that's your profession, then there could be some kind of issue if that's not declared. So figure out the status of various volunteers with the campaign, and then how you're going to manage them as far as the official agent job goes, and talk to the volunteer coordinators about that. So we're all on the same page. So people fill out the forms and all that. Important dates to keep in mind. We all know election day, E-Day, but there's other days to keep track of here. The date the election is called, the writ drop, that's the official start of your campaign period. And you need to divide, or what they say, prorate expenses into before, during, and after the election period. If you're renting an office or utilities are being paid, you have to subdivide them based on which days are in which of these categories here. And again, that's sort of covered in the Elections Canada listing for all these different expenses. Other important dates, the date the candidate's nomination is officially confirmed by the returning officer for that riding, usually after the writ drop. You're going to need to have a certain number of people sign a document on behalf of the candidate so they can run. And you can't issue tax receipts for contributions you get before the returning officer actually signs off and makes it official. And that's the problem that I ran into. Also important dates, 21 days before election day is a deadline for submitting a nomination paper to the returning officer, 2 p.m. on that day, so they're kind of strict about it. And so you're going to have to get somebody confirmed before then, otherwise you got no candidate. Important dates again, E-Day plus 1 month. So 1 month after the election is the last day, you can get a tax receipt for a contribution. Technically, the CRA says it has to be in transit on election day. The wiggle room is that 1 month, really. You could say, oh, the mail was really slow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, keep note of that because there's a certain window when you can and can't issue these tax receipts. E-Day plus 3 months, you need to get all of the election accounting info to the auditor because you're going to need a month to work on it at least. And I made the mistake of not giving him enough time, and I feel really bad about it. It was really an awful situation. 4 months after election day is when you have to submit the campaign return and auditor's report to Elections Canada. Again, I had to ask for an extension, but they're going to be tighter about that in the post-COVID era because I think I probably outlasted their patience on that. So they're probably going to be kind of strict about that from now on for our campaign anyway. My mistake was when I opened the account, they had put in a charge for giving us the checks, etc., administration. And I saw this negative number and I kind of freaked out and I put some of my own money into the account in cash because I had it in my pocket just to get that deficit and erase it. And that was more than 20 bucks that I gave them that I deposited. And you're not supposed to do that. Remember, no cash contributions over $20. So I broke that rule out of the gate. And also our candidate wasn't confirmed yet. And the problem was that I deposited somebody else's donation check. And I didn't realize I wouldn't be able to write a tax receipt for them and they'd probably be expecting that. So when I realized that, I had to return a donation, and I said, like, "Could you write a new check within the actual election campaign period so they can actually, get this tax receipt?" And they didn't do that, so no donation. Again, I'd screwed up. I should have deposited that check anyway. That would have been a big problem. Um, so that was it. And if you want to avoid making those mistakes, there's a lot of training videos at the Elections Canada website, elections.ca, and exercises for people who are learning to be official agents. So just go to that political participants and training section of the website, and there's lots of stuff there. There's all these videos that kind of walk you through the process step by step. And with luck, you'll be able to get through that fine and won't make the same mistakes I did. Okay, good luck.